How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the next installment of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we are going to be talking with Travis Mundell, who is the founder of The Daily Try. Going into this interview, that's really all I knew about Travis. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about him on the interwebs, so I went into this one with a pretty open mind, and wow, what a fun episode. We talk about international crazy world travels where he was held at gunpoint. We talk about him and obviously the stuff with Daily Try, meeting Jan Frodeno. We talk about him having to basically move away from Zimbabwe or Zambia. I can't remember which one it was. I'm so sorry. But one of those countries because of just the crazy racism that was going on. He's just got an amazing, fantastic story. He's a pilot and trained in aerobatics. So many cool things. So I don't want to spoil it all. But I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. So without further ado, Travis Mundell. Well, Travis, thank you so much for jumping on. Super awesome to get to know you a little bit. I would just love to start with asking you, who is Travis?
Man, that's a pretty tough question. Who is Travis? Well, right now, Travis is trying to start a triathlon media, not necessarily business, I don't know, but I just really want to help, triathlon growth by providing consistent content, especially around the pros. And I've always wanted to keep it a little bit more personal so fans can engage with me and, keep the narrative going and the conversation around the pros, reach out to me directly. So I share some of my triathlon journey as well and try to keep it fun and objective versus, very opinionated. So.
Yeah, for sure. Huh. And we will jump into that. I want to dive into that actually pretty deep, but I want to go back even before that. So tell me, where did you grow up? Do you have siblings? Where are you from?
All right. Yeah. So I grew up in all over the place. I was born in South Africa. My family is from Africa originally. I was fourth generation born there. So kind of long story behind that. But lived in Zimbabwe till I was like 5 years old. So I don't remember much. And then we had to leave the country because it was going through a lot of turmoil, and went to Ireland, and I grew up in Ireland for 10 years before finally moving to the States. Yeah.
Okay. So how old were you when you moved to the States? Sorry.
I was just starting high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So did high school, played sports throughout high school, tried basketball and wrestling, the American sports. I was so bad at it. I was actually, at the time, I was really short. I hadn't hit my growth spurt yet. So quickly moved on to just running and doing some cycling with my dad. My dad always loved cycling. And at the time, my uncle was always talking about Ironman triathlons. It was like the one thing he'd never gotten to do. He was always into endurance sports. And I remember watching the Ironman World Championships with him. And he was like, man, Travis, one day, maybe you got to try and do it. But he was like, you know what? It's super tough, though. I don't think you could do it. I don't think you could do an Ironman. And he was obviously saying that on purpose to kind of get me doing it. Yeah. So that always put the little, the seed in my mind that I was going to do one day. And my dad always had us every year update our bucket list. It was just kind of a fun thing to do. And he kept it like a piece of paper with that on, and we'd update it, and we'd try and at least get one done if we could every year. And so the Ironman was always top of my list. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how many have you done to date? Like, when was your first one? What's that journey been like so far?
Yeah, so it was a long journey to get our green cards in the States, and I finally got my green card, and I went traveling around the world. That was number 2 on my bucket list, was travel the world. So I did like a super cheap backpacking trip when I was like 20, 21 years old, and just try to make it to every continent, hitchhiking, whatever I could do to get to the next.
Wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah, it was sketchy. It wasn't all glamorous, and but we made it. I got back, and then the next thing was got to do this Ironman. So I was like 22 when I got back, and signed up for Ironman Whistler, which doesn't exist anymore, and it was brutal. Yeah, so only trained for like 6 months for it, and that's actually the only full Ironman I've done.
Wow.
Fast forward like 5 years after doing that one, and my dad called me, and he was like, "You want to do a half?" And that's how I got back into the sport. Doing it anyways. I'd always followed the pros, but so just one full, one half, a bunch of Olympics and local races. But
good for you, man. Dude, there's so many things I want to ask you about. So let's go back to the hitchhiking every continent. What was that time period like? Give me some of those sketchy stories.
Yeah, well, so I actually thought I was going to have to move back to England at the time. That's kind of where most of my family had ended up. And just with Trump in office, he put a freeze on immigration, which then meant I was going to, when the green card was due to come in with our lawyers, I was no longer going to be a dependent under my parents.
Okay.
So that meant like I wasn't going to get the green card. That's what our lawyer told us. And it was just like, unfortunately, probably make other plans. So I lived in Chicago at the time. I just was like, I'm going to live out the rest of my visa that we were on and then plan to head back to England. And then one day, randomly, the green card just showed up in the mail with my name on it. I was good to go for 10 years. And that was just my ticket to go then, because I could come back. While you were waiting to get your green card in the States, they don't let you leave unless for very specific reasoning, and it's so hard to do the whole application to get out. My mom managed to do it one time, but yeah, so now I could leave and come back, and I had all this security and like I'd never had before. I felt so free. And
for sure.
Funny enough, after that green card, I planted a seed in my friend's head. I was like, man, we might have to do a trip. We might have to go and maybe go see a couple of continents and save up for it. And he the next week, that seed just exploded in his mind. He was like, I'm dropping out of school. Come over to my dorm. Let's plan this trip out. And yeah, we drew a childish drawing of the world and like literally just drew a line from each continent. And it was just kind of like looking up flight prices and just made a plan. And sure enough, 3 months later, we sold everything and we were on our way. I said to him, like, I think we could do it if we had like $5,000 and if we worked in like, wherever we went. And my uncles have a business in England. We can make that a halfway trip, save up some more money. And he was like, sweet, yeah, $5,000. I'll meet you in Florida. That was our plan. And we were going to work on a sailboat to get to South America. So we managed to get a job on a sailboat.
What?
He showed up with $1,500. And I managed to save up at just less than $5,000. And we got to the sailboat, and the stories just began from there. And we actually didn't end up making it to South America on that sailboat. It ended up sinking in Florida.
Are you for real?
For real, no joke.
Oh,
it was this old humanitarian ship, and in the middle of the night, like after working on the boat for 2 weeks, it just started leaking, and the bilge pump stopped working. And so we had to take the dinghy off and leave the boat. And, we literally just had our backpacks at this time. And so
was it at port? Did it just like?
It wasn't on like marina. It was just we just had it out on a buoy, in the middle of the marina. So it was just moored. Sorry, that was the word I was looking for. And and then it just sank. And eventually when we left from there, but they had to use these inflatable tubes and put it under the boat and get it back up to the surface. But we'd left by then. But we looked on Google. The cheapest flights out of the country at the time from Florida were to Colombia. Okay. So we decided, all right, we're heading to Colombia. Just changed plans. And started going from there. The sketchy story, as for it was like a week into the trip, we found a volunteer gig in Colombia. There's so many websites you can go on. It's so easy. I know, right? They actually work pretty well from what we found out. You just can't be an idiot like Jackson and I were. And by the way, it sounds crazy like to do something like this, but having another person, and also being 21 makes it a lot easier. Exactly. Every stupid idea doesn't sound as stupid. And, you just convince each other of sometimes the wrong things. And one of those was this job where, on these websites, they advertise these gigs as, so well. They like this amazing rustic cabin in the woods, and you help us farm at the sustainable farm. And we get there, and it's just, we first get to the, everything's long bus rides there if you want to do it cheaply in South America. And sure. We get off the bus, and we decide we're going to save, we're like on such a tight budget. We're going to save every bit of money we could. And it was just getting to dusk, and we didn't realize how quickly it would get dark. It was just like light outside to darkness right away. And we decided to not take a taxi to this volunteer spot. We decided to walk it, and it ended up being a lot farther than we thought. And then all of a sudden, a guy and a gal show up on a motorcycle.
Boy.
Yeah. And he's got a gun pointing at us. And
oh my word.
Yeah, somehow takes pretty much all of my stuff, all of my valuable stuff, and he actually shot in between us at one stage to show how serious he was, because I didn't want to give him my belt with my passport and money in it. And so, then I realized he was very serious. So I handed him that belt, and he ran off then. He didn't take any of my buddy's stuff. He was obviously a little bit antsy himself to get, make it quick.
On drugs?
Yeah, it probably could be. But, over there, we learned, like, to them, that's, like, not really a crime in their minds, and there's lots of gangs and that kind of stuff, too. But to them, it's just like, white American, taken from the rich, given to the poor kind of thing, they don't.
A modern-day Robin Hood.
Yeah, it happens quite frequently, we found out, and, we just put ourselves in that situation. Thankfully, actually, as he was running back to the motorbike with the girl on, I was yelling, Passporte, like, because I needed that. And he jumped on the motorbike and he threw it in the air and shot a couple more times, funny enough. But he was nice enough to give me my passport
in the
back.
Air?
Shooting his gun, yeah.
What city were you in, like Cali? Or?
Man, I can't even remember the name of it. Begins with a P, Popayan. That's right, okay. Popayan, Colombia. It's like south central Colombia, middle of nowhere.
Wow. So I have to ask this question because I actually got held up at gunpoint once. There was no shots fired, but that gave me like some serious PTSD where I went to like a legit PTSD counselor for like almost half a year. So are you just made of steel and you're like, oh, that didn't bother me? Or how did you work through that? Because that's like terrifying.
It was definitely terrifying. And were you on your own when it happened to you?
I was.
Okay. See, I think, again, like just having somebody made it, so much better because I think we both became each other's, PTSD counselors after that.
Yeah, just talking through that.
Just talking through it. And I think because we were on such a tight budget, like so tight for the rest of that year that we were traveling, and we kept moving from country to country. Like we were so busy. Like, I don't know for you, because we, our minds were always occupied for the next thing. Like we needed to work that volunteer job in order to get some money and, have a place to stay to get to the next place and eventually get home. So for me, I think it was bad that I didn't process it well, at the time, other than talking with my friend. Plus, it was one of those embarrassing things which I didn't want to talk to like my family about and scare my parents, So, so definitely would come up at times for sure where it was like, man, what am I doing? I almost killed myself for no reason, So I think that was the hardest part, was just being like so embarrassed. And I was like, I almost died for nothing. Or, I was part of the decision making to have us walk to this volunteer spot. Could have got my friend killed. So yeah, I think there was definitely some traumatic moments. Right now, I feel like I just, whenever I think about it or share it, I just focus on like how, grateful I am that it wasn't worse. Sure. And, if I share this and somebody listens to it and goes to a third world country, is just a little bit smarter than I was. So yeah.
But, wow, man, that's an amazing story. So then after you leave Colombia, you save up your money. Where'd you head to next?
Yeah, so we just kept taking either hitchhiking or taking these really cheap bus rides. I mean, at the time you could pay like $5 US and go 20 hours on a bus and make it to, a long way. So from there, we just kind of went through Ecuador. We actually met, funny enough, some American guys who'd converted a school bus, and 5 of them were doing a South American trip. So we hitchhiked with them, and they were just great guys and so sweet. Fun. Yeah. So then from there, we went to Peru, and we got another volunteer gig. This website we use is called Workaway. And my buddy had to fib that we spoke Spanish, and we worked as bartenders for like 6 weeks. And just pretended to know Spanish, but we were caught out pretty quickly. But thankfully, they were stuck with us there. It's kind of in this small surf town in Peru, and actually they had so many English speakers come in that they were like, oh, you guys are fine. You have just like 10 drinks on the menu.
Okay, I was going to say, that's got to be, you learned Spanish quick.
No, we were just a little inebriated and could say those 10 drink names and a smile. So that kept us the job. And but that was brilliant. Learned to surf there, met so many amazing people. And funny enough, like through the people we met, and this kind of happens when you're backpacking a lot, is you tend to meet up with the same people over and over again, or now you build these lifelong friendships because, it is, at times the best moments of your life. Like it's so crazy that you're in this other country, experiences this other culture, and so you form these like great connections. And I feel like in the States sometimes everybody's so busy, and it's really hard to break down walls and get really close with someone and build a new friendship. Whereas like when you're backpacking, nobody's got anything else to do really. You're not really working, and you can just sit down for a whole evening and not think about work the next day and just get really close to someone. So that was amazing. I love that. And then from there we just kind of followed other people, or they would give us directions where to go. They'd already been here. They were going the other way up South America, or like we're heading to Africa in a few months. Like that's what happened eventually with me. I went to Africa. Jackson ran out of money, so he had to go back to the States. But since I was from Africa and never been back, I wanted to kind of explore it. And I think going by myself was a good thing. And my parents had lots of connections there. But the one guy I met in Peru, he had a home in South Africa. He invited me to go stay, so I went straight to South Africa. That's kind of how the year developed.
Wow, man. Yeah, thanks for giving some of that story. That's a crazy thing. So I did a trip with some 5 of my friends. I think it was 5 of us. One evening, one of the guys that we follow, he does like the super flight hunting to like find cheap fares and whatnot. Anyway, he found like some super cheap flights from Florida to Lisbon, Portugal. And anyway, we ended up going there for like 2 weeks and just went to Lisbon, Portugal, and then over to Morocco, Marrakesh, and had no plan. And it was emboldening for 5 guys to go over there. I had no plan, land in Marrakesh, like, okay, what are we going to do? And we haggled to figure out where we were going to stay and all that stuff. But some of the best memories I've ever made in my life, and some sketchy ones too. But yeah, just so neat and inspiring. I had no idea about that. So it's so cool to get some of that on documentation.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, man. So I do want to go back a little bit further, actually, one more time, because I am severely uneducated in the historical nature that is South Africa in the past, let's just say 15, 20 years. I know things got intense, but I really have no historical context and didn't even study it. So this is really a stupid question, but what did you experience? What happened? And like, where does it sit today?
Yeah. So my family went down there from World War II. There was actually a prisoner of war camp down there. And so that's how we ended up there. My great-grandfather was a prisoner of war, went down there. After it was released, he went back to Europe, and Europe was so war-torn at the time that there was actually more opportunity back in what was known as Rhodesia at the time, which is now Zimbabwe. So he took his family back down to Africa, and we all joke that we wish he'd just gone to the States, and kind of set us up for that. But we ended up in Rhodesia, and just built from there. And actually, at the time, it was thriving because of the mining and the agriculture. And a lot of people consider Zimbabwe as the best climate in the world. It's right on the equator. It's great for growing almost anything all year round. And so, it was called the breadbasket of Africa. So the economy was thriving, and it was a great place to live. But then, unfortunately, it was also a British colony. And, I can't speak too specifically because I don't want to mess up specific facts. There's so many things that went on during that time period that led to what happening. But part of that was when Britain gave over the colony back to Zimbabwe, and it got its independence, which, everybody had fought for at the time. Like they were fighting different battles to gain this independence. And however, after that was achieved, they gave power over to a man named Robert Mugabe, who was a dictator. And unfortunately, he was trained by communist influences over in Europe back at the time. And was taught that if you create strife and war, like a lot of the other dictators in Africa, that you'll get a lot of foreign aid and you will get personally very rich. I mean, there's obviously a lot more dynamic to it than that, but that was, one of the primary motivations for him when he went back to take over, to create a lot of strife by hiring mercenaries to harass people, kill people, and especially white people at the time. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And inflation at one point when we left hit 14 million%. It was literally unfathomable. Yeah, because he would hire these local guys and brainwash the population, and they would fly over and drop flyers saying the more you harass the white people, the more aid we will get and our country will be rich. And you could, because of Africa's history, between the black and the white people and South Africa, Zimbabwe and South Africa are pretty different, but what happened between the white and the black people there, kind of happened in a lot of places in Africa. And so you could convince a lot of people that white people were the bad folk, and this would make a lot of sense. We could all get wealthy.
Wow.
However, people like my dad, he ran a hotel and hired all the local people and educated them and loved them, and it wasn't like that. Like back, during the apartheid in South Africa, it wasn't like that everywhere. But when you're convincing, some local tribes people, who aren't as educated, or when you promise them a certain amount of money, they'll do a lot of things. And so, all of a sudden that corruption spread to even the police. And for example, my dad knew several farmers in the area who were, just taken, arrested, and killed in front of the town to make a statement. And
Wow.
these were just, local white farmers, and, just to create the strife. And so much more to it than that. But anyways, that's what created, just all of a sudden you have, no food and this inflation and no, trade and everything. And all of a sudden, you can buy a glass of milk for $1 trillion. I have $1 trillion note still.
So they were printing new
printing,
notes to just give meaning to $1 trillion.
Literally, they were just making up numbers, and then they would, when it would get too high, they would just chop off zeros and make an announcement that this was now worth this, and it was just a game of Monopoly.
Man, what in the world? How do you even function?
So that was the thing. Unless you had you were growing your own food, or just had a way to take care of yourself, you were absolutely screwed basically. And so it went from you could afford to get a plane ticket out to now you had to sell absolutely everything to get out of the country. And so that's what my parents had to do. Just sold their house, sold cars, boats, my dad just had to leave the hotel once we had enough money to fly out. They also don't let you take out any money out of the country, so he cut a bit in his shoe and shoved some money in there, and we just fled to Ireland. And that's thankfully where a friend of my mom's was living at the time, and she said, come stay with us. And at the time it was always it might get better. It was for my parents, and a lot of this is from what they've told me, is you don't realize it in the moment, and you always hold on to that hope that things would get better, and it's just a crazy situation going on. And you're just fed all these lies. Nobody knows what's going on. They just fought for their independence. Why is all this? What's going on? So when they left, they always planned maybe to go back to the hotel, but it just kept getting worse and worse. And once something's gone that far, 14 million% inflation, the country from. Yeah, what do you do? It's never going to get better. So, there's just, my parents never went back. It just broke their heart. The rest of my family, also everybody left. So, just just kind of, it's tough because people were patriotic there in Zimbabwe, they are in the U.S. It was, such a wonderful, wonderful place. Actually, at one stage, the U.S. had to pay $2 for one Zimbabwean dollar. That's how thriving it was there. Unfortunately, just some greed and a lot of terrible, terrible people caused that to happen. So,
yeah. Wow. Crazy story.
Yeah.
No, go for it. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and when I went back to visit, when I was doing my trip, it was better, but Mugabe was still in power. And when I was there, they ran out of cash, for example. It's still, they just we're out of cash. Sorry, we can't. You go to a bank, can't get you anything. So good luck, and then you just have to trade for food, and back into the Stone Age.
Back to the agrarian society. Wow, that's wild. Hey, give me just 1 second. I need to turn off the air. It turned on, and I don't want it to pick up too much in the mic.
No worries.
I'll be right back.
Cool.
Sorry, I turned it on earlier because I was getting hot, but then I was like, oh, no, it's going to be picking up.
No worries.
Give me just a second. I'm going to make a note. At 25 minutes, make a cut. Cool. Nice, man. So, wow, what a crazy story. So, you were how old when you left South Africa then to Ireland?
Yeah, so from Zimbabwe.
Oh, sorry, Zimbabwe.
No, you're good. I was four or five. I can't actually remember specifically, but either 4 or 5. So.
Okay. And then you were in Ireland until the point when you moved to the States?
Yep.
Nice. What was that like? I mean, it seems like it'd be quite a culture shift.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily for me because I was so young.
Sure.
But it was strange growing up with like African parents, and they have such a different culture to the Irish people, and the weather's amazing there to going to Ireland. And I actually live in the Pacific Northwest right now, and it's similar to this, just rainy, and people aren't as when you go to visit Ireland from the States and you go to the pubs and everything, it's just like very lively. But when you live in a small country town in Ireland and you're from Africa and you don't have the same religion, and they're very religious and Catholic there, and all of a sudden they were like, what are these white Africans doing in our local village? And they don't go to mass or the pub on Sundays, or both on Sundays. So that was weird. My parents were never settled there. And then they would always tell me stories about Africa, or, might move back, or, it was just, it was an interesting time growing up. But I mean, I had a good experience growing up, just, playing sports and that kind of thing. Thankfully, it was what my saving grace was, I think, growing up there.
Yeah. What was the predominant, a religion in Zimbabwe?
Just Christianity, I'd say.
It was Christian. Okay.
Yeah, just from missionaries going over there.
Okay.
But yeah, there's also very tribal there too, so it's tribal religions as well.
Yeah. So you grew up with kind of the Christian influence?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You still carry that on?
Yeah, and my dad's a pastor actually in Nebraska now.
So. Oh, no way. Nice. Yeah. What church is he pastor for, if you don't mind me asking?
It's it's called Gearing Zion Church. Just a really small Bible church. Yeah, non-denominational.
Okay. Yeah. Cool, man. That's sweet.
Yeah.
So then you get to the U.S. You eventually got your green card you're talking about, and then you go on this trip. What did you do in college? And did you ever go back to finish college, or did you actually finish before you kind of went on this trip?
So part of staying in the country after high school for me was going, I actually did a year at a Bible school because that was the cheapest school in the country and I could get a visa to stay there.
Nice.
And while we were applying for the green card under my parents, so I was a dependent under them. But then a visa would keep me in the country. So yeah, I went to this Bible school. Did not enjoy it at all. Actually, that's kind of what spurred on the world trip idea even more, because it was just very sheltered at the school and I just wanted to go. I just wanted to see the world. But it was a good time. And then I got a scholarship to play soccer, actually, because I grew up playing soccer in Ireland.
Yeah, I bet you were good.
That was all right. And I did all right in high school. And so thankfully, it took a year for the coach at the school to organize the visa for me to come. So it worked out to go to the Bible school. Then went and played soccer at a small school in Nebraska for 2 years, did the associate's degree thing. I kept getting injured. And I was hoping to play at like a 4-year school. But split my head open really good. Got a big concussion in the last game. And so that kind of ended that. And then also that was about the time where the green card thing wasn't going to work out, so that's when I moved to Chicago and the world trip started. But after coming back, when I decided to do the Ironman, I also, while I was on the world trip in Africa, funny enough, like really decided I wanted to be a pilot. So
let's go.
Yeah, so that was my plan, because my buddy Jackson, when he met back up with me to finish the trip, he ended up staying in Australia, and that was such a good opportunity for a lot of young people, and maybe people listening could look into it, because you can do a working holiday visa there, and work and live there, and you can make incredible money and save up, and it's an amazing country. And so he did that and had an amazing year. And I said to myself, if I don't do that, because that sounds amazing, I need to do something really, really good. And I always was super interested in flying. And after meeting these amazing bush pilots who would fly over the safaris in Africa and track the animals, and then they'd also do humanitarian trips as well to help people out, and just chatting with them, I was like, I could do this. This is that is what I could go and train for, and that would keep me super motivated. Kind because after doing that world trip, I was like, I need to travel for the rest of my life. Like, I love this.
Wow.
And so I was like, when I got back, so into flying and started at a local flight school in Colorado, and just kept trying to work and save and get scholarships and whatever I could to keep flying. And funny enough, during COVID, I started up at a university, and to help the students graduate during that time, because airports were allowed to still operate during COVID. They were like, if you want to keep working on your ratings, we'll give you credits for your ratings. So that just worked out perfectly for me. So during COVID, there was nothing else to do but fly and do school, and thankfully it just encouraged me to keep getting more ratings and get schooling done. So I finished up with the aviation bachelor degree and had my flight instructor's license, and it worked out pretty well.
So you have your visual and your instrument rating. What other ratings are there?
Yeah, so there's private you start out with, and you can do commercial first if you want, but most people do instrument, because for commercial you need 250 hours, so it just makes sense to do your instrument while you're building those hours. I also did aerobatics while I was building up those hours, so I did a lot of stunt flying, and just happened to meet a really cool man who wanted to instruct me for free and split the airplane cost with me, because he was 80 years old and he wanted to fly aerobatics because this was the last year he was going to get his medical. His doctor told him, and he was like, I really want to fly aerobatics for one more year. Do you want to do a competition? And since I was building up hours, and I couldn't say no to that, although fantastic. I was terrified when I first started, let me tell you what. But you realize it's one of those things where I realized like you're super in control when you're doing the aerobatic flying, and like if you mess up, it's you kind of thing. And you go to everything is with that, it's like there's no margin for error. It's super safe, and that actually that kept encouraging me. Like as I kept doing the training with him, at first it seems so scary from somebody looking outside, but when you start doing it, like it's the same thing with commercial airlines too, because they don't have a margin for error. There's just that doesn't exist. Like everything is 100% for safety, and it was the same with aerobatic flying. They treat it like that, and so I actually felt really safe eventually doing it too. So, and plus helped me build hours, and it was exhilarating. So so I couldn't complain there. Everything really worked out for my flying during that time. So, and funny enough, I don't do it now.
I was gonna say, are you still flying? I mean, maybe not aerobatics, but
yeah, no, I started doing after I got my commercial and my flight instructor, I started instructing just a little bit of time, but I was towing gliders for a while. So I'd hook up and tow gliders into the mountains, and I love that. But after a few close calls, where at one stage a wheel fell off of my aircraft, I know all the planes at this time are like from the 60s, and this was an old crop duster plane. It has a ton of horsepower. But they're super beat up. We land in the grass, and we do sometimes up to 40 takeoffs and landings in a day, and you just beat these things up. So part of the pre-flight inspection is to inspect the tail wheel. So it's a tail wheel aircraft, and the one thing you can't see is like the bolt that goes through and holds that wheel. You can see the top of it, so you look at that, it looks great. But after, because that, and that one's one of those items that they just visual inspect on like the annual, inspection and stuff. And to them, it could look great, but inside it was just weakening over years and years. So it sheared
or something on mine.
But yeah, it just happened to be at the worst time. It was right after I took off, and literally some guy walking his dog, not even from the area, he was hoping to see some planes at the airport, and looks up and sees the wheel fall off of my plane. I'm so glad he did, because I would have had no clue. Like I'm just so focused on the takeoff and the glider behind me and all the other planes, and I didn't realize my wheel had fallen off. And I took the glider up and dropped him off, and all of a sudden I'm coming back into land. I get a call on the radio just saying, "Hey, dude, we think you're missing a wheel." I was just like, oh no, my heart, your heart starts pounding. But they train you for this kind of thing, like, don't panic. You kind of just go through your steps of like, all right, first breathe, assess the situation, that kind of thing. So I was doing that and looking behind it. Actually, thankfully, you have a rear view mirror in these glider aircrafts. I was trying to look behind and see. couldn't see if it was there or not. So I did like a low pass over in front of the glider shack, and yeah, sure enough, they're like, yeah, you got no wheel, man. So thankfully it was the tail wheel, so it wasn't one of the side wheels.
Yeah, that would have been a lot worse.
Definitely a lot worse. And you practice for doing just wheel landings as well. And being in the grass is fortunate, so it would be a softer landing. But yeah, wheel landings where you don't use your tail wheel and you just do a wheelie basically and just go all the way on your wheels until the tail just falls down on its own. And I happened to pull off a pretty good one. You know, there's so many people watching. They were really intrigued to see how this plane was going to crash.
Yeah, no pressure.
So yeah. So yeah, just thankfully did a pretty decent landing and kind of spun around a little bit. That was it. Yeah.
So I'm curious, Travis, with your life that you have lived thus far, how many more near-death potential experiences have you had?
That's so funny. I was running with a guy yesterday, and I told him a couple too, and I was like, I'm so over it. Like I've used up 7 of my 9 lives. I feel like I'm a bit of a cat, and yeah, I'm done with it. I'm so ready to just settle down.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Real quick, what kind of plane were you flying for the aerobatic stuff?
The aerobatics was a super decathlon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Google that if you don't want to know what it looks like. It's
absolutely. It basically it's just a plane made out of fabric. It's super lightweight. It's got a big engine. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super sweet, man. So let's shift gears a little bit then. So you've kind of moved through that phase of your life, and then you start to get into triathlon more. How old were you at that point?
Yeah. So when I came back from the trip, I was 22 and doing sign up for the Ironman.
And you're how old now?
27.
27. Okay, nice.
Yep.
So you start moving into this journey. Like, tell me about the journey into triathlon and how you started to just find a piece of your identity in that, and then how you gradually got to the point where you're like, I'm going to start this thing called the Daily Tri, or maybe it wasn't even called that. Like, what's that story and founding story like?
Yeah. So when I was not so good at the sports in high school, I was a little good at soccer, thankfully, but yeah, I always enjoyed the running aspect of it, and then cycling with my dad's, and then my uncle told me about, the Ironman and all that. So I'd always following the pros, like watching Sebastian Kienle and then Jan Frodeno, so inspired by them, and then just kept watching, like especially every year, just tuning into Ironman World Championships, like had to do that. And then slowly but surely, Lionel Sanders got going on YouTube and could not miss a video of his, and then when I was doing my Ironman, just so inspired by him and all the other pros, and just being like, how the heck, like I'm trying to go sub 12 and these guys are going sub 8, like, are you kidding me? Like, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm kind of an athlete too. I played college soccer, low level, but still, like, I figured I was a bit of an athlete, and I figured I'm smart enough to train hard and whatnot. But I'm trying to go sub 12. Are you kidding me? They're going sub 8. So I just had this, like, I don't know, just googly eyes about the pro athletes, and just like, these guys are superhuman. And so yeah, just after flying and doing that whole thing and just watching them being super inspired, and having those close calls, I was just always in the back of my mind thinking, man, and once you do a triathlon, I'm sure you know this, and everybody listening knows this, once you do a triathlon, it's hard for it not to become your life, in your lifestyle. A lifestyle. And an addiction. You're right, an addiction. Yep. And so I was just like, oh man, it's so hard. I can't balance flying and triathlon. It's just a little too much for me. And I thought I could, and I moved out here to Washington for a flying job, to fly to the islands around here, and also for a girl. That's another long story. But nice. This was going to be an amazing job, to build hours, to eventually get to the airline hours, and then your whole world opens up and you can do whatever with flying. So that's what I thought I was going to do, and moved out here. But I was also trying to balance the triathlon a little bit, because my dad called me and said, hey, you want to do this half Ironman with me? So I was like, oh yeah, I can't say no. My dad, this is not going to happen again. Like, this is a once in a lifetime chance, and it would really help my dad with fitness and health too. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. So trying to get this job, moved to a new state, new girlfriend, and doing half Ironman triathlon. It's all a bit too much. And if you can tell from probably some of my stories, I do too much in general. So
I love it, man. I love it. I think it's so great.
Oh man, I learned so many lessons the hard way doing it that way. But so I was just like, all right, I need to cut some things out. And the flying job, it was super sketch, like, to be honest, like flying around here in the winter, did the flight interviews, could have got the job. I decided to say, no, I'm not going to take it. Like, all the questions they ask you are like, how low are you willing to fly? Or like, how close, like, are you willing to fly in these minimum conditions? And like, how many landings can you do? does a 16-hour day sound too much for you? And I'm just like, oh yeah, and tried to do triathlon. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Is a 16-hour day too much?
Literally, seriously. And so yeah, just decided, I'm going to take a break from flying. I'm going to just do this triathlon and, maybe think of doing something else. I'd always thought about coaching in triathlon or something like that. And so yeah, just did that, taking a break and trying to save up some money because flying costs so much and, trying to get a little bit more on my feet. And the problem though with flying is once you're not all in, it feels like you're all out. And to try and keep up to date, it's a couple $100, every time you go up to rent a plane and, just time wise. And I always felt the responsibility weigh so heavily on me. So I was like, I don't want to just go up here and there or take a friend up here and there. If I'm not 100% sharp and proficient. So I, would skip a week here or there. And then all of a sudden, to try and save up some money, I'd skip a month of flying. And then all of a sudden you're out of it. And to get back in would then take a few grand to get really proficient again. So kind of moved slowly away from it, which was okay. I was then just focused on the half Ironman and did that with my dad in Cozumel. And I was just like, I love this. This is so amazing. And
what year was this?
This was last September, actually. Nice. So it's pretty much just over a year. It was actually 70.3 Cozumel was this weekend.
Past weekend.
That's crazy. I just connected that. Yeah, cool. But so then I was just like, man, I can't stop again. I got the addiction again. What was I thinking? I just do this and then quit triathlon. Yeah right. So after that, Adobe was doing a free trial and Kona was coming up. And I loved video editing. And while I traveled, I was kind of video editing some videos together just of our journey. And so I was like, oh, why don't I make a video about Kona? And actually, funny enough, I practiced making a video on Colin Chartier. And so that one didn't age well.
Yeah, tough.
Then just made some videos about Kona, and it kind of took off because Talbot did an amazing series on Kona years ago, but he kind of stopped doing that. I love those videos so much. So maybe I'll just try and throw some up. And I got a lot of good feedback from doing that, and it just kept spurning one idea in my mind. I listened to a podcast with somebody in the triathlon world, and I'd be like, I should make a video about that. It just got a lot of traction. And it was called The Daily Tri. I actually don't know how I came up with that name. It was probably my girlfriend, to be honest. I'll have to ask her. I just kind of Googled, all the triathlon businesses and see what there was. Cause I feel like there's always somebody's always got a better triathlon name.
Sure.
And that one wasn't taken. And it was, pretty quick, moved pretty quick from there. I just didn't know. I didn't think about taking it into a business. I thought it would just be a hobby. The more it grew, I was like, man, I think I could potentially do this full time one day and, be pretty useful maybe to the triathlon community.
Yeah, that's wild, man. So the very first episode was that like of the Daily Tri? Was that the Kona stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, the very first one was, I think I did like graphics of Collins Cup scoring points or something like that. And then I did the Colin Chartier video because he won the U.S. Open. Yeah. And then it was the Kona stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was around
that's like
October.
Only a year ago? Not even.
October 1st, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. And then you've got 12 point something thousand subscribers now on YouTube. And it seems like you're really putting forward effort on more of a format, obviously the graphics, the information. It seems like you're having to do a little bit more research, or is it just because you love it so much, you're consuming it enough that it's easy to structure? I'm curious.
Definitely do a good bit of research. And now that I quit my other job that I was working here to focus more on it full time, but also
what was
to
that
write.
Job, really quick? Sorry.
I was working T-Mobile.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, which was terrible, but also flexible. So
sure.
it was good and bad. But so Triathlete actually offered for me to write and cover a lot about their pros, and that gave me just enough to be able to quit the job and do the Daily Tri as well and try and build it into something hopefully one day. But then also with that, I learned a lot through them about just professionalism and just like fact checking, and which I'd always tried to do, but then now I was just like really wanted to be more disciplined about it and. Just now I do a lot of, of course, fact checking and building it together. And I write a script for each video and try to stick to that, because I think one of the things that's hard about YouTube is trying to keep your audience entertained for the entire way through. And
for sure.
if you're just kind of waffling on, it can be yeah, I notice it because YouTube gives way too many analytics, so you can get really lost in them. Yeah, and you can get really sad when you see those stats sometimes. And so so I try to keep it short to the point, and fun. So
that's awesome, man. So how many hours a week you think you're putting toward training each week now, and then also on the daily try?
Yeah, so I train probably only like 6 to 8 hours, to be honest. Like, so not that much. I just did a marathon, so that, I was just focusing on running. I kind of like doing it that way, just just a little bit of all three, but then focus really on one.
Yeah.
And then the daily try, probably put in like 25 hours a week, probably. Just a lot of emails, I'm sure and messaging back and forth eats up a lot of time for having people on the podcast and stuff like that, scheduling that out. But then I also email with a lot of the organizations, making sure I can use footage. Trying to get to other events. I'm working a lot with Ironman in the background. So I'm going to Super League this weekend.
Good for you, dude. That's awesome.
So, and Challenge had me out, and they want me to do more videos for the upcoming year for their Challenge Roth and stuff like that. So, and World Triathlon as well. So we're constantly writing to people, but then also writing the scripts, and also I try to do like 2 videos per week. So if that could be either with my training or something else regarding the pros. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to record and edit as well. I'm sure, as I'm sure like the editing part can feel like so unrewarding after the video is shot. It's like, oh, it's done, but now I got to make it look good and sound good.
Sure. Are you have you ever considered hiring someone else to help you edit, or you like, I love control?
Yeah, I have for sure, but I think I will at some point. Yeah. I like it a certain way. So I'm sure you know.
No, for sure. Well, I will say, so I've done a couple of different things in the past. Obviously, I have a personal YouTube channel, but it's not structured like yours. So take everything I'm going to say with a grain of salt. But I have used things like, in the beginning, Fiverr or what's the other one? Upwork, to like kind of test people out, like give them all the same footage, giving them like a script and all of this stuff, and then just tell them like, hey, make it kind of look-ish like this, and then kind of see who's the best. And I've been surprised every time for the price that you pay and the value you get out for like the editing quality, how good people get. So I'm just thinking for scalability for you, because I know that your time's going to be more and more valuable, especially as they got you flying out to events, and then you're going to have to stress about editing and script writing and everything else. Like, that's going to be intense.
Yes. Though I appreciate you telling me that, because I needed to hear that.
Yeah. And yeah, people are usually pretty forgiving too when you make mistakes, I think, on editing. Obviously, like, I'm not at the level you are, but from other ventures that I've done in the past with business and stuff, like, yeah, people ultimately, I think, like you, and that's why they're coming to you, and then you give them the content in a cool way. So I look forward to seeing you grow. It's been really sweet to kind of see a lot of different things popping up. And then the Daily Try, obviously, I came across you probably like 5 or 6 months ago, and it's been fun to see the upward trend. So good work, man. It's cool.
Hey, thanks. A lot of that was due to a couple of shorts that blew up, though. I can't take all the credit for it as well. So thankfully, YouTube's come out with those shorts, and they've helped a lot of channels. So
that's super cool. So a couple other questions. So you've done a lot of things, from flying to traveling the world to living in different countries. Now, how would you consider, like, when you think about how you identify yourself and like where you see Travis going and in the future, are you pretty open-minded about stuff, or do you like really heavily associate yourself with, I'm this guy in triathlon, I'm going to build the Daily Try, this is who I am? Or are you more flexible and fluid with the way that you kind of take on these identities as you work on different things?
I think that's a great question, because when I was flying, that became my whole identity. And, while I was traveling, that was a little bit too, I was like, this traveling dude, I was, long hair, hippy dippy. And
That's awesome.
so I think I always, attached myself to what I was doing and kind of, became that person. And now this time around, because it was super hard once I stopped flying, like I kind of, gloss over things and romanticize things a little bit. It's hard not to when you're summarizing. It was really tough once I stopped, because all of a sudden it became like, I worked so hard for this, and all of a sudden, like, now I can't. Like, I couldn't even afford to go back flying. And then that was like, oh, and you end up, like you said, it's your identity. And I was just like, who am I now? Like, now I'm working T-Mobile. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I was just flying airplanes. I was just doing aerobatics. Now I'm starting this silly YouTube channel. You know, at the time you have like 20 subscribers. You're like, what am I doing? I just spent 4 hours editing this video. Like, 14 views. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What am I doing? Thankfully, the girl I moved out here with, it really worked out well, and she just kept encouraging me. And my brother actually has a pretty successful YouTube channel, funny enough, so he was a real reason that he kept encouraging me to grow. And you can't do these things alone, and you'll just go crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's because it is so much time that people don't realize. And even if a piece of content is bad that somebody puts out, like, they probably still put a lot of time into that.
Yeah, for sure.
And every negative comment, it pops up. It's hard to avoid it. So there's no filters for that. They all go on the YouTube channel. So it was definitely tough. But this time around, to go back to your original question, like, I've definitely tried to not make it my identity as much. And although it has been hard because it's so all in, and it's all time consuming, and then plus also training and doing it myself. It's all triathlon all the time. But I think I'm lucky this time because I'm so excited about it. I really do love doing it. I don't necessarily see myself like so open-minded that I'd step away from this. But I also don't feel like I don't have a bad balance with it, I think, like I had before. Like, I really make sure I put in a lot of time for it, but I also just have my partner, my girlfriend now, and we get away and we go camp. Or, if I don't hit a deadline to put the news up, so many people have told me, you got to be, right on Tuesdays or Mondays or whatever you said, and put it up. And, I'm like, you know what? There's another side to that. Now people, are expecting my video and they want it now. And, I can just be a little bit loose with it. And,
a little delayed gratification never hurt anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And, as long as I'm working hard and, being a good person, and I would love to build the Daily Try into something where it like gives back more in a way, and just whether that's through community meetups or just where we can support new people coming into the sport.
For sure.
Because it's such an expensive sport.
So expensive.
Getting like other organizations or businesses behind that. And, I had that one guy on, Sinelli from South Africa, on my podcast, and he's, working a full job, has a family, and he's also trying to be the first pro black triathlete from Africa, and has, he has to train at 4 a.m. because it's too unsafe in South Africa to train after work.
That is insane. Wow.
And it costs him like, the equivalent of $10,000 in the US to go to Nice and race at the World Championships because of the conversion, from Rand. And it's like, that's so expensive. And I'd love to support other people who are like less fortunate than us. And that, so that kind of thing motivates me and keeps it away from, I think, becoming my identity, just like maybe focusing on other people in the future. But sometimes you do have to be a little selfish in the moment and just kind of focus on building the brand first and then the business and then do that later down the line. But that's kind of like my guiding light. I would love to do that one day.
Yeah, no, those are great dreams, man, and you're well on your way. I think it's awesome. So I'm curious with the growth side of it, as you've been growing, and I've noticed and looked at your Instagram and like the YouTube and stuff that you guys have sponsors now. Yeah. Were those sponsors, did they come to you first, or did you go to them, or has it been a mixture of both? Like, what's that relationship been like?
Yeah, it's been a mixture of both. A couple of them just been lucky enough to meet in person, or through a mutual connection. And I'm trying to think how each one happened. The first one was the feed, and that one that one was out of the blue. And that's what really made me think like, oh, I could turn this into a business, because the owner called me and was like, I just stumbled upon your video. We're looking to get into triathlon. So it was a bit of luck. And they were like, yeah, we want to start with you. And I was like, oh man, would you want to do some long-term, like, stick with me for a long time? Because some people advised me on that, like, having so many different sponsors in and out is so time consuming.
Yeah, because you're doing contracts and it's just a bunch of back and forth.
And he was just such a chill guy. And, I'd lived in Colorado doing the flying in Boulder, and they were based out of Boulder. And, he was just in Kona, and he was just all fired up to get into triathlon. And so I always tell everybody, I was the first speed sponsored person,
Dude, that's awesome.
Chelsea Sodaro, who's she, So, so that was super cool, and that was motivating, and that's where the sponsorship idea came into play. And then it was DeBoer and the Fuel In now, and a couple others that wanted to work with me, and some others like not even doing a sponsorship, but also just want to just work with me in general for product reviews, stuff like that. I've been getting a lot lately. Or like I told Ryzen, for example, about wanting to make that Jan Frodeno video, and they sent me a bunch of his gear.
Dude, that was so cool. That was so funny. I had a great laugh on that one. That was really good.
Oh, I'm so glad. But I couldn't have done it without their help. And the feed sent me a Jan Frodeno. They sent me a Jan Frodeno water bottle once I told them the idea of it. My water bottle changed into his. And the companies in triathlon are awesome. And it's been super lucky. It's very like, they love that I do it as well, I think, so people can relate to that. And yeah. I think all of them too. I tell them like, now I don't ask for much at all. I'm just like, if you want to be a supporter of the channel versus like necessarily like a business sponsor partnership kind of thing, just because I just want to grow triathlon, get more people into it. So, and they all are on board with that. They're like, heck yeah, we want that too.
Yeah,
so.
That's awesome. It's very altruistic. That's so cool. Have you met Jan then?
I did. Yeah.
For this video, like, did you talk to him a little bit about it or?
I met him at Challenge Roth, and they did that interview with me, and I shook his hand. And afterwards, that's when that idea came. I was like, "Oh man, this would be a great idea!" And bumped in the guys at Ryzen at the time too, and that's when I told them about it. And then later, let me see. Yeah, we met him at Milwaukee, and the plan was before going to Milwaukee that at the U.S. Open, I would try and get one more shot with him, like shaking his hand, where we turn back into each other or whatever.
Yeah.
And but Jan is like untouchable before a race. So it's he's so focused, and if you DM Jan, the chances of getting a reply back are very low. So I was just like in my head, I had so many other projects going on at that time at that race too, but that was my main one in my head that I didn't really tell anyone about. So I was like, I'll get him after that race because I've got press credentials. I'll get him in an interview and I'll be like, Jan, can I shake your hand or something? And but of course, he swamped after the race. He won. Yeah. I can't get near him. Like I got so close. I said, "Hey, Jan, you want to do an interview?" And then he got whisked away by the PTO team. Like I was like, "Oh no!" I almost had it. And I waited for 2 hours, like after drug testing and everything. And he was just like exhausted. And I was just like, I got to do it. I came all this way. I got to get this one shot. It'll make such a difference. And thankfully, I met so many people who knew the channel out there, and this older gentleman was out there, and we were chatting for so long while we waited for Jan, and he was like, "I'll record." I'm like, "You got to do it." He just kept egging me to do it.
Yeah.
You got to go in. And I was like, "Oh no!" And I was exhausted I actually raced. I was racing the next day, and been filming all day. So I went into the tent, and this guy was like filming me, so it was definitely awkward. Like I don't think I'm not supposed to be in the med tent at all, And just say, "Hey, Jan, can I quickly get it? Yeah, can I shake your hand? Can I get an interview? We met at Challenge Roth. Like, do you remember?" And he's just like, "Okay, sounds good." He was just being such a trooper. He's so nice that he let me do that. But also, I just timed it so poorly. And but thankfully got the shot, which I didn't end up using in the end because it looked so staged. It looked so, it looked terrible in the dark med tent, shaking his hand with all my camera gear on. But just such a good guy. And I actually went up to him the next day and apologized. He was doing like a meetup at the Ryzen tent. And I was like, "Jan, I'm such an idiot. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I came up." And he's like, "Dude, it's all chill, man. It's, it's no worries. You need to chill out more, That's what he told me. So,
well, good, bro. That's awesome. I'm so excited for you to see how it continues to grow. Just with everything. It's been really awesome to hear these stories. So what does ultimate success for the Daily Tri look like for you? Which you sort of answered, I guess, a little bit, getting more people into the sport. But do you have any this is my gold star, this is what I'm going toward, this is what we're going to shoot for?
So I would love to have a couple other team members on board because it would be so much more fun doing it with, you look at GTN and they've got such a cool team together. And I love that for them. And, I feel like I could, there's a space for me to do that, but with, about the pro athletes all the time. And I always looked at Lantern Rouge for cycling. I don't know if you've seen his channel before, but he has such an awesome channel where he covers pro cycling and does the highlights and stuff like that. So, been working with a lot of the organizations, hopefully to start doing that and do highlights with analysts analysis and,
Yeah.
and get a couple of people on board like that would be sweet for me. And just, be like the YouTube hub for pro triathlon. And I would love to support lower ranked pros as well eventually if I can do that. So too many dreams.
No, man, don't say that.
I don't have a subscriber count or anything like that.
Sure.
But yeah.
Are you doing any other side hustles to continue to support the channel at the moment, or is it becoming a place where you don't have to?
No, I'm writing for a triathlete still.
Oh, yeah, you still. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so keep getting a few more assignments from then. Writing is super tough for me getting back into that. They're like, oh yeah, you'll just be able to do the pro results debrief a couple hours, and for me it takes like 6 to 8 hours, and
wow.
Staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning to get
man.
all the facts right and everything
burning
like
the
that.
candle both ends a little bit.
Yeah, and it's on the weekends too, so that's been a little tough, but it's getting better. It's getting slowly better, and ChatGPT can help out a lot with correcting mistakes.
Do you pay for like the version, like the upscaled version of ChatGPT?
I don't, but I'm very tempted.
I would, man. It'd probably increase your efficiency too.
Okay.
Anyway, I haven't used it, but I can only imagine it could help.
I'm gonna have to throw it on a credit card, I think.
Yeah, probably. Oh man, I was gonna ask you another question. What was it? It has completely left my mind. Oh yes, races. What do you have an upcoming race that you've kind of eyeballed and you're working toward?
So I just kind of destroyed myself doing this marathon. With my longest run was 14 miles. So it kind of dampens your dreams a little bit after getting crushed, but I did it, finished. And but no, I would love to now do another one. There's one called the Last Chance Marathon. It's at the December 31st, so it's such a good idea. They put it there for people to get that PB that they wanted that year, or, stuff like that. And it's like $50 to enter, which is really good these days for a race. So I think I'm going to try and beat my time and do a marathon well, and then hopefully then can take that run fitness into an Ironman, because I find the running for me is the hardest part.
Yep.
Just because it's so tough on the body. Especially long distance. So, and if I've got that run fitness banked at that time, swimming and biking hopefully will go well. But I feel like I'm always too optimistic, and then like halfway through the season, I'm just crushed. And
no, it takes a lot of time. I mean, especially if we have these ideals of where we want to perform, and then the amount of work and time it takes to get within a 10% percentile of that is like, it's unfathomable, really. I mean, it takes so much time. But what was your goal time that you were shooting for, and then what did you get, and what would you like to get?
In the marathon, or just I was shooting for a sub 4, so I actually got 350.
Nice.
But my mindset, I was once close to qualifying for Boston, so in that 3 hour mark, so I was like, oh man, I've got a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think I probably like you, as imagined, where it's like, to me, it's like getting the work done it's like one thing, but like recovering as well from that is super tough, and balancing both of that. So
on top of the creator stuff that you're doing right now too, and it sounds like you've gotten quite busy with everything. So time management is probably not as easy. Yeah,
I'm probably sure you've found this too. Is like when you're tired or exhausted from training, like being creative is impossible. Are you training for anything now yourself?
I have a couple more things this year. I just did Augusta on Sunday.
No way.
And it was 2 weeks after Ironman Wisconsin, so it was a little bit of a stretch. But it was good. I really had a lot of fun. I got to meet some people that we've had on the podcast, like Jackson and Tamara, and meet some other new people. But yeah, it was super fun. As far as what I'm doing the rest of the year, though, I have a 12-miler, a local 12-miler trail race that I'm going to do on the 8th. Last time I did it 2 years ago was on a whim, and I won, and it's a small race. So they give a free pair of Hoka shoes, and I want to try the Rocket X2s or whatever. So I'm going to try to go do that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm going to try that. And then there's a mountain bike race for the first time I'm trying November 12th with some buddies. They've been at me for years trying to get me to like abandon triathlon to get on the trails. And I was like, guys, I'll race it, but don't expect me to like go out there and, try to keep up with you guys. So they're crazy. But we'll see how it goes. It's going to be fun. Maybe Daytona in December. I'm not sure.
Oh, nice. Heck yeah. Well, you might have to start looking into Xterra unless you have done those before.
I haven't. And honestly, like I'm not a great bike handler just in general. Like we have a lot of descending stuff that you can do around here. And I always am like at least one or two from the back, if not the very back. So like mountain biking, I love it, but it takes quite a bit, I think, to like get, because you got to really become a part of the bike, and you're throwing that thing around all over the place. And around here, it's like all rocks and roots, and if you come into a turn wrong and you think you got it and you don't got it, then it's like, all right, there you go, off the side of that mountain, and yeah, good luck. But I think it'll be fun to do some at some point. We'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, cool. Well, Travis, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us your story. So I don't butcher it. How do I pronounce your last name?
Mundell.
Mundell. Okay, so just wanted to make sure. Well, Travis Mundell, everybody, thank you so much for jumping on, and we will make sure to link all of the stuff that Travis is working on so you guys can check it out.
Thanks so much for having me, Seth. This was a blast, and I can't believe an hour and a bit's gone by already.
I know, it's crazy. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Stupid Questions podcast. Thank you so much to Travis Mundell for coming on and sharing his story. It was so fun to dive into so many different aspects of who he is. Wow, I'm just blown away with what a creative and fascinating person Travis is. If you want to check out his stuff, I will link everything in the show notes, from his video with Jan Frodeno, obviously his YouTube channel, his personal Instagrams, all that stuff, and maybe even a few articles from Triathlete that he has been writing. Please go check him out. And my appeal to you guys is, if you have made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much, and want to thank our sponsor Trex Shorts for helping continue to support this podcast. Also, if you guys would not mind, it would be so helpful to us, to me, if you would make sure to like and share this podcast across all platforms and give it a review. That would be super awesome. And if you'd like to follow the personal journey over on YouTube, it's at My Crazy Moonshot on YouTube. You can check it out. Just type in Seth Hill, My Crazy Moonshot. And the last thing, I am going to be taking on an athlete or two going into this next season for triathlon. So if you are looking for any swim, biking, and running coaching, please reach out. If you want to do that, you can just message me on Instagram. I think that'd probably be easiest. It's Seth_T_Hill, or you can reach out to the Stupid Questions podcast for now. Maybe not the most professional thing ever, but we'll go with it. So thank you guys so much. And again, thank you to Travis, and we will catch you in the next one.